Perfect.
Hey everybody, you know me, Elysia Buss. I'm here and we're doing a live interview on Facebook for Horsepower Empowerment Through Connection with the amazing Anna Twinney, currently located in North Carolina, originally from England and raised in Germany. I'm so excited to get to talk to her. She has done so many incredible things in her life in partnership with horses, including working with Monty Roberts for many years in California. She's an equine and animal linguist, which is not the same as an animal communicator, but we're going to get to that. And she is an inspirational speaker, an author, a DVD director. She has done, I don't even know, she's done so many things. So I'm actually going to let her tell you all the things that she's done because it would take me like 5 years to memorize the entire script. So Anna, thank you so much for being on the show today.
I appreciate coming on the show, and I'm excited to get to know you and your audience and to share a little something this year. I think it's important to be inspirational this year and to share with people, no matter how we get knocked down, to get back up again. And it's been a big piece on my mind lately because I feel like everything that's going on in the world with the chaos, it would be very easy to get pulled down. And Absolutely. To forget that you can create your dreams or move one step forward towards them. And sometimes we don't even need to know how to get there. That's been a big thing for me, Elysia, lately, where individuals were asked, how did you manifest? What did you do? Was it a vision board? Was it this? Was it that? And I won't deny that on times I've had one vision board. But a lot of this manifestation hasn't come from meditation. It hasn't come from holding the vision. And I had to really look at it recently. I've been looking at it to go, what is this? When people ask me, when you were in England, did you ever envision yourself here? No. When I was a police officer, did I envision becoming a horse whisperer? No, I did not. This wasn't a childhood dream or a long-standing dream. And it's only now when we look back and, for me, look at this manifestation piece that I realized, is it destiny? Many speak that destiny doesn't happen, that it's not written. And many speak that we can manifest our own reality, as do I. But I think the truth comes from the fact that it's been my heart. That's it. It's been in my heart. I was born to do justice. Not necessarily the conventional way where people would say, did you bury yourself in horses? Absolutely. I was the kid that went to the barn in Germany, cycled there, spent the moments there, did the vaulting, did the riding, taught myself, wasn't the rich kid, didn't have the silver spoon in the mouth. And in fact, my father got anaphylactic shocks from horses. My mother was deathly afraid. And so I was the only one in the family that was looking to have the horses and play with them and swim with them and so on and be involved. Now, if I look back, my parents weren't guiding me. They weren't part of it. They weren't checking in on my horse. If I jump another step forward, I wasn't the one invited in England to the hunt balls or had the trailer. I never had the money for the trailer. And so I was working really hard only to be able to afford my horses, ever. So now jumping forward, I look at it to go, did I make every step forward to study to become this? Did I envision it? No, I didn't. But my heart did. My heart was being called to the United States. I always felt that I was born in the wrong country, honestly.
I know that feeling.
It's a bizarre feeling. Where do I fit? All these people are saying they have roots, and you go, I don't feel like I have roots here. I feel like this is going to be temporary. And so that's one of the reasons we moved to North Carolina. I finally wanted to put roots down and go, okay, could this be a blend between my ancestors and a community, and also my heart is out west, so can we blend everything here with the Mustangs and the horse whispering? And I feel like the land called us. I know the land called us because we only ever looked at one property, and this is the property. And it was all about learning to listen. So learning to listen to the horses when you're working with them, capturing the whisper, learning to listen to the animals and what their silent language looks like, and then ultimately learning to listen to your call to know that you're going to land in the right place.
Yeah,
So,
it's beautiful. Yeah, intuition, that's a really important thing to be able to listen to and have access to in a person's like growth. Like for you, have you always been really good at like listening to your intuition? Like how did that arrive for you?
when I look back to my second career in the British police force, it was all intuitive based. No, not all. It was a blend, living between the worlds of the mind to go and learn the law and to look at a grey area in life to realize it's not as simple as we're looking at a domestic violence situation. It's not that simple. There's always more behind the scenes of asking one person's perception and another's perception and putting it together. And one could choose to either be that black and white, here's the law and this is what it's like, or going off of listening to both parties and intuitively feeling what is truthfully going on here. What do we need to read between the lines here? What are they trying to say, and how are they handling the situation? So when I look back, that's the kind of individual I was, which was to look for the truth, a truth seeker, to go tell me the truth from your perception, and let's see how we can make this work, because neither one, generally speaking, would want to see the other one being arrested. Not a good person, you know. When you're really frightened and so on, you might say yes, arrest that person, but when you're in the place, you realize they're working out of fear and concern, and you're looking for solution based, and the solution could be court, but the solution could be let's figure this out. When I go that far back, I was 18 when I started to do that, and it was all about speaking for and on behalf of the underdog. And my piece was to give a voice and a choice to those that didn't feel that they could give it to themselves. Right. It's so interesting. Fast forward, I did the policing 8 years. Fast forward, I left the police force because your hands are tied to a degree and you can't always facilitate the change that you're seeking. Mm-hmm. And not only that, the courts don't always back you. So there's all this big piece to go. As an empath, you're feeling everybody's situation and you're not trained on how to let it go, right, or how to move through it. So as an empath, it was very difficult to support all of those that needed more help and care that one could give. Because right, you weren't being paid to help and care them, you're being paid to serve them. And so coming out of it puts you in a predicament, because there's not a lot of support to go, how do I move through this as a person now? I've played my part in their life, but how do I move through it for me? And it wasn't as simple as compartmentalizing to cut off and go, okay, now I'm at home, life is good. And for me, that didn't come easily. Yeah. Now, little did I know that when I took the leap of faith to come to California, that in fact I was being groomed by God, the universe, being groomed to become the voice for the animals. So although people look at the career choices to go, that's a big change, and that's very linear thinking, and this is kind of open-minded and esoteric thinking, is it? It was all communication. It was all learning to listen to every individual, that everybody had a voice in those days, and then looking at the horse whispering, it was learning the silent language, but the same language, both have the common thread of body language, both have the common thread of the energetic exchange, and both you're reading between the lines. It was just changing species. Right. So for me, coming in with Monty, I had the ability to read the people to a degree, right? Had the ability to read the people, and then it was about transforming that to learn the herd dynamics and the science and the behavior of the horses. And who better than one of the most talented individuals that you could see in the world in those days, late 1990s, the doors had opened for mankind to realize that horses had a language. That was foreign to most. Up until 1997, that was foreign. It was always about a system. And it was about getting from, and it still is about getting from a horse what we want, but it was still more of a system, and it wasn't taken into account that they too are not livestock, still defined as livestock today, but they're not livestock. and they have families and they have dynamics, and the science backs it really nice, Elysia, because the science will back the brain to say they have equivalent emotions or they have memories for life. And it comes as a surprise when you hear people say, do they remember me? Yes, they do, but they won't show you in the same way that you and I might hug or say hi and smile. They could just glance up from eating and you go, oh, they don't remember me. They do, but they don't care the same way, you know? Or express it the same way. But it was beautiful to see the common thread of the language, that this is interspecies. So interspecies isn't simply from, let's say, insect to dog and cat, or dog to dog, but to realize that a dog could speak to a parrot, etc. Or interspecies can be human to horse, human to reptile. All of these species, and the commonality would be the body language, the energetic exchange. And then if we can tap into it, and that's your key, is the ability to tap into the telepathy, the ability.
And that brings us to the difference you talked about being an equine and animal linguist versus an animal communicator. Would you like to define that for the audience?
Yeah, I feel that it would be complex for individuals that will often see the word animal communicator and they believe that's horse whisperer. So this won't make sense yet. But it doesn't matter if somebody's an equine coach, equine assisted learning, equine facilitated learning, or horse behaviorist. As a horse behaviorist, they could say, I'm a horse communicator. And of course they are. They're defining the reason behind behavior modification and so on and so forth. So there's a piece of it, an element of it. And when you begin to ask individuals in a clinic type situation, they'll come back to say, I know what animal communication is. It's about reading the horse's body language. So we can tell if a horse is upset by pinning the ears, swishing the tail, high head carriage, any behavior like bolting and bulking and biting, that would be animal communication. But what if we could talk to the horses from a distance, that we're not next to them, that we are thousands of miles away, and now no longer from county to county or from classroom to classroom, but in fact going to another state and another continent. And that really is the animal communication. And this is what expanded my growth of how exciting to know that you can talk to a horse silently through body language, that you can start them under saddle by asking for forward motion and listening to when they're in pain. And it takes an astute eye to learn pain management, like veterinarians can see the lameness or if they're a little stiff. It takes a keen eye to perhaps go and study with a chiropractor or go along and drive along so that any horse trainer can truly recognize that. And that's a piece of it. To know that horses have personalities and not be surprised that perhaps there's 28 personalities in horses, and to identify the importance. So for example, the lead mare would not be the dominant mare, or the adolescents would be quite different as they grow into themselves versus a fully grown adult and somebody that's retiring. So acknowledging different stages in a horse's life combined with different personalities, combined with different learning styles. So now it gets a little bit more complex as a horse whisperer. So instead of having a system to say the horse needs to meet me here, we meet them there with personality learning styles, herd dynamics, environment, past issues, history, all of that. Well, there's your horse whisperer. They learn to identify what the nuances mean. The little change in the eye when they're glazed versus when they're alert, or when they're looking skeptical versus when they're warm. You see all of that in the eye. And one of my quotes I'm known for is, the whisper's not in the butt. Because I see all of the students that come to me that they're asking for forward motion and they're looking at the horse's ass. And I'm going, there's no whisper in the butt, you know, why aren't we looking at the eye? We're looking at the butt. And so you've missed it all, because the butt will move forward or turn towards you, but you're not capturing the thought, and you're not capturing the intention and the energy. So this is all horse whispering, to realize that they'll change that beautiful brown, black eye, they'll change it, and their mood is in the eye. That is all horse communication. So then people believe, but I am an animal communicator because I see all of that. Well, the next generation of horse whisperer knows that we can sit at home and connect with a horse through one mind to another mind. And that's the glory of the animal communication, is to realize this is another language. It's a language of love. So you drop from the head to the heart. It's a language of pictures or emotion or inner knowing and sense. It's a language of intuition. You can hear sounds, hear voices, feel it in your body. And the whole thing about becoming a linguist would be to learn, what's your language? What is yours unique to you? So what's unique to me may not be unique to you. So we have to learn your language, and the difference between interpreting and perception and the truth of how it's coming through to you. So that is your telepathy portion, that we can talk to a horse in the current place, current time, and he could perhaps share his racing career. And this is where it blows people's minds to realize. I was in Singapore talking to a therapeutic riding horse, and they were taking them off the track in Singapore, thoroughbreds, and he could come up with his colors, his racing colors. And this is the deal, that you've got a lot of Singaporeans sat there in wonder because they're simply learning horse behavior from a horse whisperer. And here I am saying, you know what, give me a moment. If you allow me the opportunity to connect through animal communication, I no longer have to do experimental exercises to discover what the issue is. I'm going to get it from the horse's mouth. Give me half an hour, we'll have it from the horse's mouth. Give me 1 week, I'll determine it otherwise through exercises. So why not go to the horse directly? Is it saddle fitting? Is it pain? Is it nutrition? Is it riding style, riding error? Is it environmental? Ask them. And that is your animal communication. That's the piece that's so magical, which is a leap of faith forward to go, are you ready? You know, next generation horse whisperer, are you ready to take that leap? Or is that too wide for you? If you've come from a place of dominance, fear, and control, that's a hell of a leap to take. And your interim would be horse whispering. You know, dominance, fear, control, animal communication. Or perhaps you have to take a middle leap to go and say, I'll learn herd dynamics and behavior and positive versus negative reinforcement because it's tangible. I can see the result of I apply pressure, I release, it makes sense. Versus, what if I said you never have to do pressure release again? Well, that's too much for them to ask. And now you've got me on my roll here, but there is a truth to it too, to go, there's a practical application of we can talk to someone telepathically, and yet they've still got to learn to come off of pressure to save them from pulling back or flipping over. There's a degree of reasoning through animal communication to say, you've got to stand there quietly, not put the pressure on you, you'll be safe. And then there's the truth, the reality of a horse going, shit, I've just felt the pressure, and innately they're into pressure that they've got to go up and over. And that's the glory of moving forward in the evolution, to come from traditional to horse whispering to animal communication, but also to come forward to go, if I can load a horse here in North Carolina all the way across the world, why do I have to put a dually halter on, which is a pressure halter? Why do I still have to teach the horse practicalities? But I do. I still have to have the practical application.
So as a life coach, like, how is it that you work in partnership with people that are really struggling with that big jump, right? Like, especially traditional horsemen and horsemen and horsewomen that are really like well respected in their fields, especially as well as our backyard horse people, because we're all on our journey of horsemanship. Like, how do you help coach them through that to have like that healthy communication and healthy boundaries, and step them at like a proper gradient or honor where they're at? Like, what would be your recommendation for people that are going through that and dealing kind of like, I guess it would get to a point of conflict resolution
Yeah.
Right? Because there's so many different viewpoints and different models across the span versus it's equine assisted learning or mental health or like therapeutic riding or like traditional horsemanship of Vescaro, like all those different things. Like how do you manage that?
Let me make that answer generic first, because the answer is to read the audience. And so if I formerly was at a number of expos, less so now, but when you're at an expo, you're reading that audience to say which kind of individuals coming and what are they coming to see. And so you're adjusting to the audience. If I've got a bunch of life coaches, that might be quite different as veterans. And then the veterans could be different from the cowboys and girls. And then moving forward all the way through to the energy healers. And a lot of this is about reading the audience. So an example, for example, would be that I got invited to China as one of the first natural horsemanship. That's my cat. Jada wants to go out. So she's going to sit there, and at one point I'm going to have to lean over. Maybe I'll do that now. And
that's totally fine. It's good to honor the animals and what they're wanting.
I know, especially with the animal communication piece. Come on, go outside. It's chilly. Which brings it to a nice piece, kind of an organic piece here. So I was invited to China and was one of the first natural horsemanship clinicians, but then not anybody, a female to boot. And it's a male-oriented environment there. And I was very fortunate. I went to the American Quarter Horse Association of Beijing, and they're very, very honorable people. The majority of the individuals there were men, and I had a female translator. And it was a couple of days of demonstrations, and they'd come from all across China. And I'm not entirely sure as to who, but I know that the founder of one of the top dressage barns was there, and somebody else. So they came to look, including TV. So you can imagine it, that you got the round pen and TV. And a round pen's a great place to be because it's round. There's movement, you know? And it's so funny because people critique it, but it's this thing of a horse can move freely in a round pen. And if I said to you, I'll take you to 15,000 acres, you'll be doing a safari trying to keep up with the nuances, and you'll never learn. So a round pen's a great place to come in and say, here's an audience, let's watch what's happening. And so you never know as a horse whisperer if you're getting the last chance horse or the most dangerous. You never know. And as a female, you never know if the men are challenging you and setting you up for failure. You never know. And I remember it clearly, they brought in the studs. And again, my head's trying to figure it out of why are you bringing in the stallions? Are you looking for me to fail? Which I default to that, or what? Well, partially probably they did. And the other part would be that it's an honor to work a stallion. So there's a combination between man to man, I give you the best, which is a stud. But the other thing is, could she handle him? And I did handle them. And I have a certain degree of equipment to be able to support me, which I trust. I trust my equipment. I trust my knowledge. But once again, if you're really truthfully saying this language is universal with the horses, is it? Is it truly universal until we've explored that? But it is. I've been to New Zealand, Australia, China, Mongolia, Europe. It is universal. And that is incredible to think that the Dutch warm blood and the Holstein and the Trakehner and the Norwegian Fjord and the Australian Brumby, we could go on, all speak the same language. It's universal, which is incredible. But then there's a second piece too of as soon as you unclip a horse to put them at liberty, you're equal. You're in a round pen and you are equal. And if that horse has anything to say for humans to go, I don't like any of you, and you're all tied with the same brush, well, now you're very vulnerable too, because they're going to wish to attack at that point in time. So now you're going on reading the horse's body language, but ultimately feeling that horse's energy and that intention. And studs love to blast you with energy just to let you know, I'm a stallion and I'm in charge and you will not be leading. And they're right, I'm not going to lead. I'm going to look for partnership. I'm going to look for mutual respect. If I respect you as a stud, I wish for you to respect me. I'm going to honor you, please honor me. And I will step up to it to show you how to do that, which means I'm going to ask you, not tell you. I'm going to hold my ground and I'm going to be authentic. And you already will be authentic, but let's dialogue through this. And that's exactly what happened. We dialogued through a number of horses to say, here's the behavior, it's likely caused by this. And through every movement that a horse reenacts or acts out, it's their past, it's their behavior, it's coming forward who they authentically are. And that's the glory. When you're looking at horse whispering, you're looking at authenticity. And for me, that means mutual. So we show up genuine. And here's the thing too, they will always show your skeletons. They will always show you how you truly feel. You cannot fake it till you make it. You have to be transparent with horses. And so when you hear that terminology, fake it for a little bit, you can't. You can draw on energy, you can draw on an inner part of you, like a warrior part of you, but you cannot fake it with a horse because they keep pushing a lot of the time until that genuine piece comes through. So in China, looking to stay very authentic and bring forward a new way of being. Now let me add to that. Before I started the demonstrations, they said that they had one of the Mongolian wild horses in a neighbor, and did I want him to come in for the demo? And I visited next door. They'd not been able to catch him for 6 months. And when you can speak the language, it doesn't always take that terribly long. So I was able to catch him. And I had paused, I'd thought about it. In the few minutes that I had to go, if I don't catch him, he's not in a good spot. If I don't catch him, I'm not teaching them how to talk to him. If I don't catch him, I don't know what they're going to do to him. So I caught him. And I didn't know they were going to snub him to a post for 24 hours. Once I caught him as I get choked up, snub him to come to my demo. He comes to the demo. We do an incredible demo because he's wild. He's a wild horse. And we talk. It's beautiful. The cameras catch it, the people catch it. They can see there's a dialogue, capturing the whisper, minute detail, energy, breath work. Gorgeous piece of work. And the tears would flow because later that night they found, as macho as they are, that it was necessary to break him. And they broke his spirit and put a saddle on. And I won't forget it because I've never done what I did that day. I've never done it. And I saw the crowd cheering. It was after my demo at 6 at night. The little horse was terrified and they bulldog him. They twist the neck and stuff like that. And I couldn't watch it. So I went into the barn and I've never done what I was about to do. And I sent Reiki. So that I always do that. I sent Reiki, but in my mind's eye, I said, do whatever you have to do to stay safe. Do whatever you have to do. And the next thing I know, I look outside and he's bucking. He's bucking like hell. Is it a coincidence? And the rider comes off, and of course I wanted the rider safe, so I'm sending energy to go, I want everything safe, but you've got to be able to protect yourself, dude, you know. But he bucked them off, and it was that thing of, he was being broken. They just learnt the whisper, and he was being broken, and it was, we've got this, you know, she's showing this piece, but we've got this. And you have to stay centered at that point in time to go, one, I know we did good because we showed the whisper. I know we did good. Two, forgive me. Forgive me for what I did, because if I hadn't caught you, you wouldn't be in this predicament in this show right now. That is on me. And I did not know that was going to happen. I would have never done it. If I'd never done it, he would have been abused back there, even worse than he was. At least I had to work it through to go and say he felt love for the first time in his life with me. He got seen for the first time. He got heard for the first time. And perhaps he'll never get seen and heard again. But he did. For a moment, somebody could say, I see you and I hear you. And for a moment, he would know that there's good people out there. And then instead of saying these are awful people, because they're not, my job was to say, forgive them for what they don't know. They're doing the best they can with what they have, and do know that you planted a seed today. Because of you, they can never be the same people again. Because of you, they will walk out of this demonstration different. They have to, because they cannot go back to who they were, because they've just seen that this language is universal, this language is silent, and this language is your language. They cannot deny that, because we were authentic. Two parts to it. One, that there's still the tears today to go, I caused him that pain. And the other piece is we caused a seed to be planted. And there will be, out of that demonstration and out of that show, many lives would have been touched in a good way. Now, here's the punchline. I was invited out, and it was between Clinton Anderson and myself. I got out there, which is awesome. And I left, and some of the individuals wanted to continue studying, so they reached out to continue studying. And it was too much of a leap. They wanted the control. They wanted to be able to say, no, stop, don't, my way. I control the feet. And my thing is, always ask why. Why is the horse doing it? What's he trying to say? Adjust to why he's doing it. If he's walking all over you, is it because you didn't create a boundary? Did you never say stop? Did you not match them with the energy? Did you not guide him? He's trying to live in our world. He has no clue what you want unless you're clear. That's always been my piece. There's not a quick fix. It's not a solution of he bites, you back him up, you slap him in the face. No, if he's trying to nibble to say, could you pay attention? We adjust how we respond. Too much of a leap for them to go from snubbing and tying to asking why. Clinton's methods would be a good way to go, which is a halfway in between, which they could digest and go that far and say, okay, I know how to school, makes sense to me. I know that it's potentially the horse's fault, so that's okay, because everything we do is right and everything the horse does is wrong. Could be a mentality that was in place there of we've got to control them, we've got to guide them, they can't move a foot. There's a halfway in between. Again, I had to work that through to go, why not? Why not? This is the way. I know this is an incredible way forward. Why couldn't you jump that far? And then I have to remember me, go back to the police. And if you'd said, you know what? If you just create the space and the environment of love, that's all that's needed. I would have gone, are you cuckoo? Are you crazy? You know, this person needs to be put away. This person needs this. You know, I wasn't ready for it. If you'd said in intuition alone, you can make decisions, I wasn't ready for that. So I can relate to where people find themselves with the right trainer that they find themselves at, to look at it, to go, yeah, the horse has a voice. And if we can provide the choice and not necessarily look at traditional horse whispering, which would be work versus rest or discomfort versus comfort, and the horse will always move out of discomfort into comfort. Great theory, 100% so. But do we really need to move the feet that much? Or could we simply shift it with an energetic exchange?
What advice do you give to people? That all of that was wonderful, and I so appreciate you sharing those stories with me.
My ears and my nose running.
No, it's good. It's good. It's being human. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you for being vulnerable. I do appreciate it. It's important. There's no shame in that. And speaking of shame, as people move in their journey, their evolution of horsemanship, we learn new things, and sometimes people have shame and guilt attached to doing things that were, wrong, because we like to put names on things. But part of our evolutionary process, like, what advice would you give people to help them navigate through the shame and the guilt of things that they did with horses that, as they learn new things, might not necessarily have been ideal?
I think this one, for me, we can keep fairly simple, because it's something that I'll share with my students too, that might come in with the tears and feel the guilt of, their vision on the 3-day eventing, or their vision on their dressage career, or their cutting, etc., cutting career, and the way they trained those horses. And for me, it's this thing of you did the best you can with what you have, and that's it. We trust implicitly, hopefully, our instructors, coaches, and our trainers, because we find them, and often we're guided by what is being told, and it could be, you know what, you got to kick the shit out of this horse, tell him he's not allowed to do that, or, you know, now back him up half an arena length because that was inappropriate. And we're given information that we trust is real because we respect that individual, and not necessarily that we put them on a pedestal, but certainly they've got the 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of experience, and of course how disrespectful it would be if we ignored it. So therefore we put our faith and trust into somebody with more knowledge. But also, if we don't know in general, we're doing the best we can, and if we're going to get hurt, we come back with, but I had to do that, I was going to get hurt, and this is all I know. And we could go on from the person saying, I evented because it felt good to me, I felt freedom, I felt talented, I got recognition. And now I look back and go, wow, I drove a horse to break him just for me. There's all these scenarios that we can look at, but the truth is we did, generally speaking, the best we can with what we've got. Moving forward, now that we become educated, you don't have that opportunity to go backward. That's no longer the best anymore. So if you come, for example, to a clinic of mine, and then you revert back to force-based and fear-based, you're no longer sat in that paradigm. You're in a new paradigm. Now it's not appropriate. And now, although there's no such thing as blame and no place for blame, one does have to consider, but you know better. You're more educated. Maybe it's not integrated yet and it hasn't been processed, but at the same time, what you did then, you're not that same person. So reverting back, now we can say, hey, you need to look at that, because clearly you thought you were ready to move forward, but you need to make the steps to move forward too. It's not just on a plate, or here's the platter. You've been given the platter of information. You've even been shown how to do that. Now, not in every scenario, but stay open-minded, and then you will be able to integrate it in. And that's the big piece, is don't revert back, move forward. If your heart is pulling you towards the true call of the horse, and you know that that's not the way, then move forward. And surround yourself with people that are like-minded. If your gut says, this does not feel right, then the chances are it's not right. It's not right.
Yeah.
Elysia, I could give you scenarios on that because I have been around the block once or twice, and often people believe that other countries have worse horsemanship. So Morocco, Mongolia, China, they go, oh, that's the Chinese. It's on our doorstep. Everything that the Chinese do, we're doing pretty much. And everything that everybody else is doing, we do here too. And sometimes it's perhaps worse because the information's freely available here, that you go, you know what, you have the ability to educate yourself now. And you know when your gut is telling you that this horse is suffering and it doesn't feel right, that we need to explore saddle fitting and welfare and pain management because your horse is crying out. And when you have bloody spur marks on the side and your horse has scar tissue in his mouth, you can justify that, but living with it is a whole other thing, because you know spur marks are not necessary. You know, they don't need to be bloody and scarring. And I had a whole clinic on the, northeast did a clinic, or Midwest they call it. Midwest, I did a clinic and they all came in with bloody spur marks, and their guts knew it was wrong, but they weren't able to speak up on behalf of their horses. And you know, I went back the next year for the clinic and half the amount came. And why was it? Because they were fear-based. Their trainer had basically forbidden them to come to the clinic, and if they came, they were no longer welcome at the barn. And so it's the fear of, I'm going to lose my trainer if I come to you. So you're going to keep your horse in an abusive situation. That's what you're choosing now, because now it's a choice, because now you know better, now you're choosing abuse.
Yeah. And I guess that comes back around too, is just like, how do we help people to have healthy communication and boundaries to be able to navigate things like that? Because so many people, they really struggle with emotional regulation because we get reactive. And when people aren't taught the skills, right, to help bring them back into that space, to be able to have those oftentimes uncomfortable but very important healthy communication cycles and stay in neutrality, like, how do we guide them in that so that they can decide, be like, I'm worth more than this, like, I have value, my animals have value, and while this person has things they can teach me, like, they're no longer in alignment with what I now know, right? And I can stand in my truth and move forward. So giving people support to navigate through that is so important but difficult, right?
Right. It is, and it's beautiful because you'll see this too, and you'll meet this. It can be a spiritual cop-out, Elysia. You know, that it's this thing of the spiritual cop-out can be easy of, I've outgrown, or I need to be authentic, I need to be aligned, when in fact you're not looking at your own issues. So it's either an incredible leap forward to truly see, I've outgrown this person, or it could actually be the fact you're not looking at you and you're not taking ownership.
Right. And that accountability is a really difficult thing. And because it's like, it's at all stages of our development, you know, from new horse people to people that have been in the industry for 50 years, you know, like, that we still have things for us to look at. And sometimes it's just really uncomfortable to be able to look at the things inside of oneself. And some people don't necessarily have the support, like the bandwidth to step into that space to own it, right? Like, they might want to, but like, if they go there without the support and without the tools, right, they might crumble, and they might not be in a space of being capable to hold their life together and still do that. And like, how do we have a grace with ourselves and each other as we navigate that space without any sort of shame? You know, it's an interesting dance.
Sorry, it highlights animal communication, because I say in my day, so go back 20 odd years, even now, but go back 20 years, a number of my peers turned around and said, I don't want you to talk to my horses. I don't want to hear from them, because what if I've been doing it wrong all these years? And so suddenly you're breaking down this paradigm to go and come back with, what if the horses did say there was no need for you to have done it this way, if only you'd asked and not told me? And it can be a fear component. So fear with animal communication isn't the unknown alone or a Christianity belief system. It can also be, I've based my life on my techniques. What if my horses are going to tell me I was wrong?
Right.
And your life work is being challenged. And it's huge if you make it huge. It truly isn't.
That's the whole grace and accountability thing, because for so long in our society, like, if we make a mistake, we're somehow a terrible human being, right? Like, we're stupid, we're bad, like, we've created all these like dysfunctional patterns, instead of just being able to put ourselves in situations of community where we can have that clear, respectful, loving communication cycle with like somebody that we're around, and they can tell you that you made a mistake, and you can own it without them shaming you and invalidating you and, you know, like, blaming you for X, Y, and Z, right? Instead, you being like, oh yeah, like, I made this mistake, taking a deep breath, exhaling, like, really just sitting in it and being like, okay, and now where do we go from here? And like, making apologies where you need to, forgiving yourself, forgiving other people, like, whatever circumstances built you up to the space where you are taking those actions, right? And the more we can model that and own our mistakes, like, the better it becomes for ourselves and for the people around us. Because then, in us holding ourselves accountable and being humble and having grace and forgiveness, it creates an opening for those around us to be able to do the same.
Yeah, and I think as humans, we like to jump on it right away. The horse is doing this and he shouldn't be, or I've got to. got to be a better leader. And it's so funny, for 22 years I've used the word leadership, and then now I hesitate, and it also churns in my stomach, because everything's about, I've got to be a better leader, got to be no, not really. You've got to be a better communicator to
Right.
say, it's not acceptable you dragged me across this field, or you're now herd bound and worried while I'm riding you, but I'm still on you. So it's not okay that you're going to disregard and try and get me off because I'm the obstacle between you and home. You're going to buck. We're still in it together. And so it's not necessarily about leadership of be firm, be controlling, be precise. Yes, you've got to be all of those things. But the truth is, have the empathy. This individual is not ready to do this, or this individual now feels, oh, I was on a trail ride in Colorado a couple of years ago, took two of my horses, and it was about 9,000 feet high. We lived at 6,800, so a little bit higher, and beautiful. We'd driven a couple of hours to get there, so they'd been in a trailer 2 hours. We went riding, and I'll never forget it. Maybe we were an hour and a half in it, and the person we were with, the trail person we were with, turned around and said, we can go for another hour if you want. And my response really was, no, I think my horses are good with this. They're wanting to go home. Well, we should go for another hour then if they're wanting to go home. And I came back with, well, actually, I'm not quite sure if they're fit enough. This is a little bit higher elevation and they're not used to this kind of terrain. Well, they can get used to this terrain. And it was this piece of, my horses are telling me they've already traveled 2 hours. They've been on an hour and a half. We've got another 2 hours home. The elevation's higher. They've had to navigate through rocks and different things. They are not robots. They're not motorbikes. They're not actually conditioned. This is a nice walk for them and a nice outing, and they're ready to go home to their family. And so it was that piece of conveying it to go, actually, we're going to honor the fact they want to go home. And then you've got a traditional trail person coming back with, what are you on about honoring them to go home? If we want to ride another hour, we're riding. I went, well, this is where we can split then. You know, if you wish to ride, absolutely. But from my standpoint, they've asked really kindly, and we're going to go home now. So shifting that mindset to go that the partnership isn't, you do what I want, when I say it. That's true partnership of I get everything I want and you're now compliant, so therefore you're a good horse. The partnership is, I'm sensing you're concerned. I'm sensing you're fearful. Let me look around to see what you're fearful at. I'm sensing you're a little off on the right hind, so let me see if I can help condition you. I'm sensing you're herd bound, so let me see if we can build more trust, that you realize you can trust me and you don't have to be drawn back there. Or I realize you're drawn back because you spend 24/7 with them and I'm only in your life an hour a week. You know, it's all of those pieces to recognize of, it's not leadership, it really is partnership.
Yeah, and the other side of that I see with people oftentimes is people are like, well, I want to ride today. Like, even if they're in a bad headspace and their emotions are all chaotic and they're not congruent, and then they go and they project that on their horses. And instead of just being like, okay, I'm going to come out to the barn, but I'm just going to hang out with you. And I'm going to manage my own emotions. I'm going to come back into myself, and I'm just going to connect with you as a being because I love you. And we can put off training for today because this is more important. Or like checking in with your horse and seeing if they're off or if they're burned out, and just honoring where they're at too. Like, that's the partnership. It's just like if we were in a relationship with our significant other, right?
Yeah.
And honoring where they're at, right? And you talk to a friend and somebody's upset, and you're just like, okay, do you need me to listen? Do you want me to give you advice? Do you want to collaboratively problem solve? What do you need from me in this partnership, right? Because so often out of care and love, like, we can just be like, somebody calls you and you like immediately go into problem solving. And that might not actually be helpful.
But if you're wired because you're somebody that wants to serve and fix, because that's how I am wired, is, all right, you've told me this, I've downloaded the information, I've got these avenues to go, but I'm with you. Often, I'm very blunt, so often I would be the one, so what is it? Do you want me to listen? Or am I the punch bag? Or what am I? And I'm not always the most subtle to just sit back and see what they want. I will say, tell me which one of these roles I need to play so that I've got a head start in this, and I'll do that. But I do my best, right? I do my best to realize you're just speaking at me. That's okay. But as long as I realize you want to do that. And the same with the horses. And it's not easy, you know. I feel like sometimes when I talk like this of people could only take half the jump, it's because I've been there and I could only
Sure, yeah, no, I get it. I don't judge people necessarily in their journey. Like, that's why I really try and be clear about that. And that's why I interview so many people across the span and the different models that we have available, because I don't think that any person is like 100% right about any, like, you know, anything in regards to horses, like religion, like whatever. I'm just like, no, like there's too many facets of life and our personal experience. Like, I'm not here to tell anybody who's right and who's wrong. You know, like I've made mistakes across my experience of horses and across my experience of people. You know, like, who would I be to judge and tell you you're a bad person because you believe one thing or another? That would not be correct.
Jump into it. I came into horses when I was around 10, but if I've been told then, if you've got to learn all of the science, all the senses, all the herd dynamics and the behavior and the body language, and then you've got to learn about yourself, which adult would come in, they'd look at it and go, I can't do this. Have I got enough time in my lifetime to do it? So it's a lot. So to learn what is the horse saying when they're trying to go back to the herd, there's a lot of interpretations that are needed to go, okay, now you need to circle to stay safe. Now you need to actually stop holding your breath and breathe. Or now, you know, you need to get off your horse because it's unsafe. There's too many scenarios, and there's people we like the one of stay on your horse and circle, done. Okay, I know to stay on my horse. When this happens, here's the formula. When this happens, I do this, it equals this. Instead of when this happens, here's 12 scenarios and you've got to pick the appropriate one. And that's my methods. It's not going to be for everybody, because I ask people to look inside to go, what was the intention of the horse? Well, I don't know. Well, let's learn the intention. Well, how do we learn that? We learn that through failing, because you learn that if the intention was to drag you, of course he has to drag you for you to learn what an intention of dragging feels like and looks like. So there's a degree of failing in order to learn to interpret what the horse was doing, instead of stopping the horse before they've actually done it. So there's so much involved and encompassed by it, where you're learning, is this my emotion or is this theirs? Am I picking up on theirs now? Is it mine? Have I just shifted my emotion? Is it both of our emotions? That's a lot to ask somebody. But those that are invested in that journey will love it.
Yeah, no, I really love that. You know, when was it that you first came upon, like, you're like, I want to be an inspirational speaker? And what was it like when you had your very first speaking engagement?
That's so fun. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. They've never asked me that. So there's my stomach churns. Here's where I started that not many people know. Very few know. So when I was at Monty's, and Monty's philosophy truly was, here you go, Anna, teach. And I had an incredible mentor at Flaggers Up that helped me. And, but he still threw you in the deep end. And then it was explained to me, you're in the saddle, Anna, you're riding, and as long as it's going well, he'll leave you alone. He's the type to treat you like a horse. So when things are going well, he'll leave you alone. When things aren't going well, you'll hear from him. So very clearly. So when I had to speak in front of groups and even demonstrate, because in those days we demonstrated the join up, and it would be round penny and starting colts under saddle. So you'd never met the horse before. You'd start a horse under saddle, and there could be 200 people watching. And so you could be talking to the 200 corporate individuals. So I used to either throw up or have diarrhea, chronic diarrhea prior. And people see me now to go, but that's you can do that. I didn't come this way. I was in the toilet throwing up and having diarrhea, and my neck would always go bright red and sweaty palms. And I had that for a long, long time. So this wasn't given, nothing's been given to me. Nothing has been given to me. I have had blood, sweat, tears, and given up. I've surrendered to this. I have sacrificed loosely, because we'll see the word sacrifice. I sacrificed my home and my career. I sacrificed so many things, working at Monty's, being there 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, sacrifice. But it's loosely because of the gain. You know, I sat at that round pen. I was the round pen queen. I put my heart and soul into it, sacrificing an outside life. But I say it loosely because the truth is, what do you gain from it? The gain outweighs the sacrifice. And the 22-year journey of traveling the world, you sacrifice, and I have certain things with my own horses that perhaps my own horses had greater visions that I couldn't give because I was on the road, or we would have done cow work and stuff like that we couldn't because I've been on the road. So there's sacrifices to save other lives and to serve other lives. And if I wasn't who I am, I'd be somebody doing cowgirl stuff because I love it, but I am who I am. So probably lost my train of thought here. So where it began was nervousness, concern, and fear. Where it ended, it still is, by the way. If I were to look through a curtain and go, shit, there's so many people, or on the live stream, too many people, then it could grasp you and get a hold of you. So I don't do that. I spend a minute centering. So if I were to look, my head ran away with me, pause, breathe, clear it, turn away, center, and then go, okay, we've got this. And take it from there. Truthfully, it's all spiritually guided. That's the truth. If I can get the open channel and not worry about the question I have to answer. And all of the DVDs were created like that. My husband's had a nightmare with it because Vin's from Manhattan. He was a computer consultant and he has done a lot of the filming. And so together they've been in the theater industry, filming industry. So for him, it's all scripts. And I can't do a script. I'm the one going, hi, soothe, and let hi, swallow. And all I'd have to, my name's Anna Twinney, and it would take 20 minutes. You give me no script. Allow me to let it flow, not memorize lines, and I'll give you all the information possible. The first line I have to memorize, I can't, and I get nervous, and then I get frightened, and then I get short, and then I get Tourette's. I am the Gordon Ramsay of horsemanship. So it would go down that line instead of allowing the channel of communication, which is alignment, ultimately constantly getting aligned.
Well, that leads me to the next question of like, your first book.
You know, it's a really, again, good question. Good question, because if people that are listening see the first, there's two first books. One, I was invited to be part of a book and it was called Horse's Teacher. And it was one of 10 really remarkable women. The majority of them were in equine coaching and we were part of the book, and you had to invest in the book, which is common nowadays.
Yeah. Very
common to invest. Well, I had no money and I consulted a lawyer because we had a retainer lawyer thing where you pay in every month. So again, you didn't have to pay a ton, just, you know. But I asked and they said, don't touch it with a barge pole. Stay away from any book you have to invest. I talk to friends, stay away from it. And I'll never forget, I walked with my dogs and the guidance was to do it. And I came back and I said, we're going to do the book. And we'd done the maths. So there's the spiritual and the head involved. And the maths was, I'm not going to get any money back. And I thought, this is interesting. So why am I being guided to do it? Anyway, we did it. I don't think we got the money back on sales of the books. In other ways we did. But I remember 5 of the people that read that book. There's many more, hundreds if not thousands that read it. But I remember 5 because they all came to me and they told me their stories. And they opened with, you saved my life, with the chapter. You saved my horse's life. And the penny started to drop as I get tearful, but it was this, that's why I was meant to write my chapter. My chapter was not for me. My chapter was for them to read it and feel inspired or feel hopeful or feel that they're not alone. And it's so beautiful to bring them into our fold. That was the first book. The first book, I also sat down for a long time, and instead of launching mine, I launched my trainer students, and I launched it for them. Again, it was an accumulation of chapters, and it was to inspire others to go, okay, what brought you to horses? And what was really, really incredible about this book, many things, but what was really incredible was they all chose life lessons. Without knowing it, they chose life lessons. And without knowing it, the common thread was wild horses. Everybody chose a chapter in that book for life lessons and wild horses. And it's incredibly inspirational. So that was the first book that we published with Reach Out to Horses. And then there's been 2 more, and there's 3 more pretty much ready to go out. So lots of books coming out.
It's beautiful.
And I love writing them. I love writing them to share the evolution, which was Beyond the Barn. Beyond the Barn is an evolution of horsemanship from my career to go, I was traditional to first generation natural horsemanship to next generation natural horsemanship. And what does that mean, that evolution? And you can see it in the stories that were told in the 22 years, from structured horsemanship all the way through to saving a racehorse's life by communicating and connecting with him through telepathy. It's really beautiful to see the evolution of feel.
Oh, that's really beautiful. Yeah. I'm sure there are so many things that we could ask. Is there anything that you would like to share with the audience about your journey, about the work with horses, anything you would like to see evolve in the field?
Let me flip back a little bit. Every business decision I've made has been inspirationally guided. And so when I invested in that book, it was guidance based. When I created the DVDs, I had no money, and yet I managed to manifest it and pay the creators per sale of the DVD to manifest it. And I decided to create a DVD for the good of the horse in the equine coaching field. I'd watched the horses being used, not partnered with, although I'd seen a lot of partnerships, but also used. Or I saw them neglected, where perhaps saddle fitting wasn't there, or turnout, or they weren't allowed to socialize. And I saw the miracles. So the children speaking, the veterans living and sleeping again, and all of these miracles to go, are we investing in the horse, and do we know the horse's outcome in 5-10 years time, where they've given their heart and their soul? And how will that come back to the horse? How are we depleting them? So I created a DVD in partnership with horses. And I wanted to get it out there. Because people perhaps wouldn't buy it. So when I knew I made this, I knew it wouldn't sell. I knew it. I'm thinking, how do you get it on the shelves with coaches? They won't know it's of importance. And also I'm putting my neck out there because I'm showing them natural horsemanship and animal communication and energy healing. And if they don't believe, it's going to go in the trash. And I knew I was creating a DVD that could potentially go in the trash. Well, we filmed it, we edited it, and it costs tens of thousands to do that. And I needed another 10 to get it out to all PATH certified locations. And I'm thinking, I've already done this, I don't have another 10. I manifested a check. One of my clients looked at me and he said, what's your next project that you need help on? And I said, I really want to get the DVD on the shelves of coaches. How much do you need? Well, I need the postage. Here it is. And it went out to 1,000 certified locations. 1,000 certified locations to say, this is for the good of the horse. So this is how we can hear them. This is how we can support them. And if we support them, they're supporting more people. Everything I've done has been like that, where I'll get a gut instinct to go, well, that's going to be a nice flop in many ways, flop financially. Could have called it financial flop. But it was outweighed by saving a life, to come back with, we influence that life, we saved a life, we made a change, we inspired somebody. And that was the price to go. The price is this, and we can do it. And so for me, where we began with this interview, it doesn't matter if it's one horse in a backyard that in China gets to be showcased for a few minutes and he's planted a seed, or in fact it's Sheikh Mohammed's horses that the jockeys get to learn another way to colt start. It doesn't matter if you get that moment in Trinidad and Tobago, helping the therapeutic horse have a voice through animal communication, or you go out to Germany to fulfill dreams of individuals that could never afford to come out. The rescue that can't leave, the person at the rescue can't leave because she's got too many animals, and we send a DVD for free to go, here's a gift and you're worth it. You're worth it. And we did the same with the Wild Horse DVD. We went out to nearly 1,000 rescues to come back with the same principle of, if we can show you that you can gentle the wild horses through touch and energy and through their language versus force, then we've done a good thing. So I guess there's not one horse that I could list here to tell you he's been the most inspiring. And the one that's standing alive today is the one that's most inspiring. The one that is no longer being ridden because he's in pain. That's what counts. Or the horse whose teeth had been filed electrically by the vet and was going to be euthanized because they couldn't feed him anymore because of incorrect veterinary care. But we found a way to find the mash for him. All of them are equally as important, and they all make the impact. They all do.
So that's really beautiful.
No, and I've written about them in some books. I'll continue to write about them in books, and I'm hoping once I've got these 3 published, we can move into My Herd and My Herd stories so that they can be shared. And each horse here then can stand in his or her limelight a little bit. We've got feedlot foals here, we've got Premarin foals, we've got Mustangs. They've all found their way here. All of them has a story, and perhaps their story will engage a lawyer to stop the feedlot foal industry, or engage an advocate like Ginger Catherine's through her documentaries. She saved not only Cloud's life, but she's brought an incredible limelight on the plight of the horses. So everybody has their mission and vision, and everybody has a part to play. And mine is education. And that's what I focus in on, the welfare of the animals through education and communication.
That's fantastic. And what different programs do you have at your facility that people can come and see and experience you and your horses? And
thank you. So what we have right now here and across the US, due to the current situation versus abroad, we're looking at different areas. So I did create the 101 things to do with your horse, and I created that, and it applies to everybody from rehab and retirement to partnering, etc. And the same applies to the 101 to do with the clinics. So we have trick training on there, and it's tricks for training. So that would mean things that are helpful to help the horse halter himself or come on command. So tricks for training. Then we have liberty. So that could be dancing with horses, behavior modification, communication. We have intuitive riding on there. So if you're looking to go bitless, bridleless, bareback, you name it, got that on there. And then there's energy healing, telepathy, motivation, and secret training things. So that's all on 101 things to do with your horse, which is an online platform. So if we're looking at virtual right now and the conditions we're living in, fantastic way to go. You get 52 weeks worth, 2 surprises in your inbox per week, no more than 10-15 minutes, so nobody has the time issue. But that covers the clinics, because on a clinic front, We have confident horse and confident rider, gentling wild horses, gentling wild foals, colt starting, relationships, simple and advanced solutions. We have all of that on the Horse Whispering, to the point where you could become a graduate of the program and have a foundation course or become a trainer or instructor. That's only one part. I know that's one part. My other part is the animal communication, where I offer the clinics virtually and live and in person of how to talk to animals. And the areas could be relationship, animals in transition, animals on the other side, behavior modification, animals as your souls and your soulmates, reincarnation. There's a ton of it, problem solving, lost animals, you name it. I offer clinics and workshops where you can really delve deep and become a certified animal communicator. And then we offer energy healing for horses, and it's this year that we'll be starting the coaching program on top. It's 22 years of life coaching I've done, but we're going to put it into a program hopefully by next year, and that's part of the nonprofit, which will invite first responders, etc. So lots and lots on offer here and across the United States.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you for asking.
You're welcome. And to just wrap us up, so who or what in the world inspires you today?
Yes, I've been excited to answer that question, and albeit that this is a very, very organic call and I don't know any of the questions you're going to ask, this is one I've had a moment to think about that speaks to my heart and soul. My mentor is a man called Crawford Hall, and Crawford was born in Atascadero, California, and he was a cowboy. And when he was 28, he had a riding accident. He got bucked off. Cowboys are adrenaline driven and ridden, and they like that. Unfortunately, Craw landed the wrong way. And if he were to do this today, he would have been okay. But in those days, because he's in his 70s, he rolled the wrong way. And it would have caused a spinal injury. He became a paraplegic. He is today still a paraplegic. He and Monty were friends with many other incredible horsemen because his inspiration was Greg Ward, who was a Futurity Snafflebit winner, world-class horseman. Crawford knows some of the best horsemen in the world, and he was invited to join Monty's farm. He was the farm manager when I turned up there, and a wonderful soul. I could no longer see Crawford in a wheelchair in my mind, so when people came to flag us up and they'd say, I'm looking for Crawford, I'd inevitably say, he's the man with the cowboy hat you'll see over there. And I'd forget sometimes to see wheelchair because I didn't see it after a while, and they might come back and I'd have to go, oh, he's the one in the wheelchair. And he was the farm manager. He lived way beyond what the doctors stated. They said he would only live 3 years. I believe because of Monty, he lived longer. Monty gave him a purpose as a farm manager, incredible horseman that both of them are. And he's an inspiration on many levels. One, no matter who came on that farm, those gates were open. He would treat everybody equally. Didn't matter if they were the best racehorse trainer in the world or a woman who was seeking to find herself. He'd treat them the same. No matter if they asked the same question day in and day out, 365 days of the year, their question was the most important question. There was no such thing as a stupid question for Crawford. While people might say that, they could think it, not Crawford. No matter how little large the question was, he would give them the time of day. But that wasn't what inspired me either. That was a piece. He inspired me to treat everybody with the same compassion and every question like it was the first time asked. Huge inspiration. But he also inspired me because you never know if Crawford had a bad day. Here's somebody who needs help to get out of bed. Somebody who needs help sometimes to breathe. Somebody who cannot live without a carer. That gets up out of bed every day. That has a reason to live. So when I have a bad day, I sometimes feel guilty because I look at it and go, look at this guy. Look at this guy. He deserves to say he has a bad day. He deserves to be upset and cry. Do I deserve that? And so, yes, I can be a little hard on myself, but he's my inspiration, where I could call him and go, I'm having a bad day. And then I think, why are you calling him to tell him you're having a bad day? His life is limited. He makes the best of it. He could see the horse through his eyes like nobody else from a wheelchair. I was his legs. I'm the horsewoman I am today because he would teach through me. He would teach through me. I was his legs and he'd teach, and I could act it out for him. He is my inspiration. And because of Monty, and with Monty's help, because Monty and he worked together, I got to benefit from the knowledge and see the energetic exchange and see it all through somebody else's eyes. I don't think you could get a better mentor, a better inspirational person. He's not doing too well today. I have a gut feeling for last year and this year, so he's not doing terribly well today. He walked me down the aisle. So you can imagine how much he means to me.
Indeed. Yeah.
Not just anybody, extraordinary somebody.
Yeah. That's very beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Anna, and for all of the things that you've shared over the course of the last hour.
Yes. I would want everybody to meet him, and I want his name to stay alive. And when our nonprofit comes through, we're going to build a covered arena, and it's going to be called Crawford's Hall.
I love it.
For him. So yes, but thank you. I in turn would love to know more about you, and in turn I hope this is the beginning of a friendship. And I thank you for your interest, for broadcasting, for doing all that you do as well.
Thank you, and you're very welcome. I greatly appreciate that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, everybody out there, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye.